Another Inside Laravel. Uh, this week we are covering potentially more, but we'll be starting with sessions and error handling is what I kind of put together. Um, I really want to give Eloquent and then sort of off to the side migrations a good sort of a chunk, like a whole session. So I didn't want to put those together with any of the other things. And I suspect Blade also might be fairly meaty, so wanted to not leave that in. But if we do sessions and error handling and we still have plenty of time, then I will also look into Blade. And I'm actually just, while I'm here, just going to update this. Last week we covered, what was it, Command-Shift-F? Yep. Events and listeners, broadcasting and notifications. That was a fun one. Let's move error handling up to here, so that it at least is in line. So this is where we're at. So as a review, over the last month and a half or whatever, we have looked at the request lifecycle. That is where we started. So we talked about the index.php and the bootstrapping. Excuse me. We talked about the HTTP kernel, routing, middleware, pipelines, and we got into all of that stuff. Then we looked at the service container. So binding, resolving, contextual binding, singletons, service providers. We briefly looked into facades as well. Following on from there, we dove into configuration. So how the configuration files get read, how the environment is pulled in and resolved, all that kind of stuff. We also looked into the managers. So a few of them anyways, the storage, cache, logging, essentially how that pattern works and is kind of used in a lot of places in Laravel. Then we looked into the queues and jobs. We didn't look into the bus, and I still do want to revisit that, but we looked into the error handling there. We looked into middleware a little bit, which is really just pipelines again, so we didn't spend too long in there. And that was, I think, a pretty solid deep dive as well. Do still want to get to bus, which is why this isn't crossed out, but other than that, we kind of covered everything there. And then last week... when we did the service container, the configuration and managers, we also looked at the scheduler. So let me just also move that up then, actually, just so that we can kind of keep this. So let's see, configuration, managers, and we also looked, there we go. There we go. So that got covered. And then last week, as I said, we did events and listeners, broadcasting, and notifications. So that was a lot of fun. Really did enjoy that one. So again, today we are planning to cover sessions and error handling. I don't really have a lot of thoughts about this one. On the session side of things, I was thinking we would look into encryption. I thought that and the cookies that kind of are attached to sessions, I thought that we could look into maybe briefly the driver situation under there. It really is just a manager situation, so maybe not super exciting there. And then also look into the Flash type stuff. The way that you kind of redirect with and all that kind of stuff that uses the session for storage. And I think there's actually some really neat stuff around flashing and the way that is managed from request to request. And then, as I said, error handling. I don't know why this one just sort of feels like it's the right thing to throw in to round out today's stream. Would be great if I get a confirmation in the chat that you can hear me, that my mic sounds good. It looks like it might be peaking a little bit, so let me know if I'm too loud. But it should be using my Yeti mic this week rather than my AirPods. So, all right, let's jump into this. So, I actually want to start. Usually, I start in the code, but I think I'm going to start in the sessions, in the doc. Sorry. for sessions. So mainly because I haven't spent a lot of time working with sessions, for the most part, I don't touch them. They just kind of work with, Breeze or Jetstream or whatever. It's kind of just built in, and you don't really touch the session directly at all. So yeah, I guess there's sort of two ways into this. There is the request session helper, and then there's three ways. Then there's the global session helper. There is the method on the request instance, and then there is the session facade as well, which presumably either they're going to be a loop, right? So either the session global helper uses the facade or vice versa. Yeah, let's dig into that, and I actually want to look into what is stored in the session. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about how PHP sessions work just generally, rather than as a kind of initial primer, because that might be a good place to start in our understanding of what Laravel is doing that is special with sessions. So I'm going to set up the database session handler. I normally would never use that because Redis is superior in every way for sessions. It's kind of the perfect use case for Redis or Memcache or any sort of in-memory or mostly memory-based store over the database. It's just a lot of turn on the database you don't need. So let's just go ahead and set that up. And the reason I want to do that is that I think that it will be easier to inspect the data in the database than from a Redis, right? Pulling it out of Redis can be a little bit of a chore. So it looks like we are set up for database session driver. Let me add the MySQL data source here. I think this is sale. What have I got actually set for the password? Sale and password. So let's see if that works. That does. Okay, perfect. And what do we even have in here? We should have a sale database, right? Laravel database. Okay. So in here we have a sessions table. Perfect. And we actually already have session data in here, which is interesting. And it looks like it is encrypted, so we'll have to... Maybe that isn't the easiest way to look. But all right, well, we're going to continue on from here. So yeah, like I said, I want to first actually look at how PHP sessions work and what gets stored there. What is the easiest way to do that? Maybe just create... all right, well, we're going to do this. Touch index.php. PHP session start. Dollar session foo equals bar. We could also set it doesn't have to be strings. So it can be an array. It can be an object. Is that the right syntax? Right, let's write that and just lint that. Okay, been a long time since I've done something like that. So let's just serve this up, right? So, dash s, lowercase? No. Oh, I need a port. Just toss on 8090. Okay, so if I go to here, this should have created a session. Question is where to put it. session should be on the disk. So yeah, choosing the file handler. Session save path, there is no value, which I believe means that it ends up going into temp, right? I have no idea. Let's see if we can get that from PHP. Like there's a function for that. Session functions. Yeah, okay, we should be able to do that here. So if I don't pass in anything, it will give me... Okay, so let's just open up our file. Echo session save path. And then also I'm going to var dump the session just so we can see what that looks like. Refresh, localhost 8090. Oh, I stopped the server, didn't I? Okay, we'll refresh that. Okay, so we did not get a path. So it must need to be set. Let's quickly do that. PHP-ini. We're going to edit this one, I guess. Session.save path. Yeah. Yeah, we'll just put it in /temp. Okay, now let's restart that and refresh. Okay, now it's in /temp. So now that we've done that, let's cat our session. That's probably it. Let's hope it's it. Okay, there's our session, right? So by default, with the file handler, what PHP will do is it will write serialized data to the session file. The session file itself is, there's a prefix ini, which apparently defaults to SCSS, and then the ID of the session. So if we actually go and look at my cookies over here, storage cookies, here's my PHP sesh ID. This value here is this value here. And that's kind of, how session fixation works, right? If you can guess what this is, then it will load up this session, and you become that user, right? But yeah, this is just a serialized string. So what that means is that if I bring this into Tinker, I broke something in here. Let's take a look at our service provider. Oops. Suspect it's because that's in there. Yep, okay. If I just do unserialize, undefined offset Y. Might be because of that extra... Wait, why is that? Foo is a string of 3 characters. Bar. Oh, I think it's missing the outer, like, here. So foo bar. What does that look like? Yeah, it's missing the very beginning, I think. Which would be like a colon. What would it be? Foo bat. 1, 2, 3. I have 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 3. So I think it would be 3 colon. And then we drop that around it, maybe. Nope. All right, I'm not going to guess at serialized data. But the point being, this is a serialized string. I can't remember exactly how we get to this point. There is some magic in there. Maybe the docs will tell us. Session. There is a way to override. Here, maybe. Session handler interface. Okay, we don't need to dig any more into that. But point being, it's stored in plain text. It is exactly the data that you put into the session superglobal, and by default just stored on file. But there are other handlers, like there's a memcache handler and whatnot as well, and you can write your own. So let's take a look at what Laravel does differently. So I think as we saw initially when we looked into our session table, the very first thing is that it is encrypted, right? This is not that same data. It should be encrypted using the key, but it doesn't look like... I guess it is. So this is the session ID. Let's go ahead and actually... What does our app even look like at this point? Is that where it's at? Where is it at? I don't know where it lives. env. I don't have an app port. I don't know what the default is for sale. Is it sale PS? 80? Really? No, I don't think so. Sale port 80. What's the name? Laravel.test 80. Yeah, it's just port 80. Did that not... Why is that redirecting? I might actually have something in my index controller. Do I even have an index controller? What do my controllers look like? Might be worthwhile blowing this whole thing away, starting from scratch here, but let's take a look. Route slash should be rendering the inertia stuff. Let me run the so npm run dev. See if that helps. No. Oh, that's interesting. Is it just redirecting? I wonder if it's... Nope. Server dropped the connection. What is happening? Sale logs. Oh, interesting. Oh, because of that issue. All right, so let's sale restart Laravel.test, was it? Yeah, let's see if that now works. Okay, it's not doing what it was before, and I suspect now it will work if I run that. What? Interesting. Why do I not get... Okay, bad method call. Oh, where is... I must have typoed something. It's probably just me fat fingering stuff. So let's go to the macroable. here. Line 115. Oh, that doesn't help at all. I don't know where the original thing is. I'll have to just search for this. There we go. Okay. This is handle request, right? That's what's happened there. So finally, all right, we know we're at where we are. Okay, so let's go into our route here, and instead of doing this, we're going to essentially replicate what we did in the raw PHP. So we're going to start. I don't think we need to do that, but we're going to do it anyways. We are going to put or add. Which one would it be? Add. Okay, put. So foo is bar. We'll just start with that, and then I want to output the session ID because I want to see ultimately what we get. So here's our session ID, and we're going to go to our database table. We'll refresh that. I don't think that it didn't write the session, so we need to. I think because the DD. So let's do session close. What's the save? Okay, and then we'll refresh and take a look at the session table. All right, here is that's it. Yeah, there's our new session. So this is the data that got written. And I'm trying to think of the best way to go ahead and pull this out. And what I'm thinking is there a built-in session model? Yeah, I didn't think so. Let's go ahead and add a session model. So sail artisan make model session. And then we're going to add a cast. And so what is this? It's payload. But it's not just an array, it's an encrypted array. We can probably get out of this tab now. Yep, there we go. So let's take a look if I can remember how to do encryption with models. Here we go. Encrypted array. That's what I thought it was going to be. Okay, so let's do that. And then we'll sail tinker session find, and let's grab our ID here. Oh, we have a new session. Okay, that's fine. App models. There we go. Okay, and I should be able to pull out the payload. I cannot. Is it encrypted with a different key? It shouldn't be. All right, let's dig into this. Let's actually take a look at what's happening. So we're going to go here and we're going to put in our xdebug break and make sure we're listening. We are listening. Let's go ahead and refresh. All right, cool. We are in our code here. So first of all, we're going to start the session. We're just loading. Okay, so we're doing a call static for start. This is a facade, so the instance is the session manager. and it will call start on that. So let's jump into here. This should be calling the database version of it. So it's just forwarding it through the manager. We're going to pull up the driver. All right, so now we're in the session store, and we're going to call load session. So let's see what that does. Read from handler. My attributes is the token name. Okay. And then what is this read from handler? What does that do? This get ID. Okay, it does nothing in our case because this doesn't return anything apparently. So that's fine. Marshal the error bag, which shouldn't do anything because we've just started a session. Yeah. Okay, so this is related to when errors happen, like in a form or a JSON validation. It looks like marshal the error bags when using JSON serialization for sessions. I think that's what that's going to be, but we'll come back to that. All right, so we technically loaded an empty session. If it has a token, right? So let's see. This has, it's going to look in here. Here's a token. So if it doesn't have one, we generate the token. Otherwise, mark it as started. All right, moving on. So we're going to put this value into the session. So put, I have to go through load every time. All right, we're going to go down into the driver. Here's our put method. So if the key is an array, then it's going to assume that it's just setting key value pairs. Otherwise, you're specifying a key, and then the second parameter is a value. So if it's not an array, it will format it as an array. I think pretty typical Laravel stuff. And then it will just set the attributes properties, right? So at this point, our attributes should now contain this attributes, the token, and our foo key. So, okay, that's fine. I was going to point something out, but we'll wait. All right, now we get into session save. So this is where obviously it's doing whatever it's doing to get that data format. So let's go into here. Skip the driver again. All right, here is our save. And then this is kind of like where things get a little interesting, is like this age flash data. We'll get to this. We're going to skip over it for now. And then let's do the write. So it's going to call the write method with the ID and then prepare for storage. And then serialization, I don't know where that gets set. So by default it's PHP, but you can, oh, okay. So this would be really interesting. So why would you want to do that, right? Why would you want to choose whether or not it uses PHP or JSON as the serialization format? And the reason that you might choose JSON is, one, if you're not encrypting it, your database may store JSON more efficiently than like just a straight up string. Essentially just like it doesn't care like what the string is, right? So that might be one reason. Two is you might be accessing this from languages not PHP. And so if you can handle the encryption side of things, then you would have a better time with JSON than PHP. So regardless, So ultimately, based on whether or not it's JSON, it will either JSON encode or call serialize. One other reason to use JSON actually is that you lose like the object identities. And so if you store an object in there with like a wake up and unserialized magic methods on it, those won't get called. It will just be a standard class. So that's another reason. Like in terms of security, no one can inject anything into that. Serialized notoriously has security problems, and it is a problem that is no longer being addressed by internals. Like they feel like it is now just documented and known, and they're not going to keep chasing that. So that's another reason you might want to choose JSON encode. All right, so regardless, the attributes specifically get turned into a string, whether that's a JSON string or a serialized PHP string, and they go into this prepare for storage method. So let's go into that. Is it as simple as just return whatever gets passed in it? It looks like it. So I guess depending on the driver, that is going to potentially change. And so if we're using an encrypted store, this is where the encryption happens. So I'm actually interested to see if that happens. So we just went into ID. So just to clarify, we're right here. So let's continue over that. And now we're doing prepare for storage. We're just returning the straight data. And we're going to write. So if it doesn't exist, read the session ID. All right, so, okay. What is payload? This is the data that we just, oh, we shouldn't have skipped that, I guess. Oh, is it just base 64 encoded? Okay, that's why we're going wrong here. So let's just grab this string, base 64 decode. There's our session. There's our serialized data, and we'll dig into that a little bit more. Okay, so very important. We did miss that. So actually, I kind of want to start over, and we'll just drop. Nope, not there. What was it? Inside of. Nope. Where did that happen? Oh, here. I want to put a pin there and come back to it. All right, let's just run this through. We can finish up and then we'll come back. So if it exists, perform an update. Otherwise, perform an insert. Yeah. I mean, nothing crazy there. Just a straight up database insert, and then it says that it has saved, and then it sets started to false, and I guess that's because it's sort of closed the write handler is the thinking there, so it doesn't try to do it again, and then of course we've got our DD. All right, let's just run that one more time, and we're going to go ahead and run to that point. So yeah, get default payload data. All right, so our data at this point is just the serialized attributes. So that's our token and our foo bar. What's also in here is, let me just evaluate expression. Unserialize. I guess it's still in this, right? Hang on, it should be this attributes. Oh, we're not where I thought it was. Okay, so hang on, evaluate expression. Unserialized data. Okay. So it isn't just our token. It is also our foo, and then this underscore flash. So there's sort of this unspoken rule, I guess, in Laravel that you shouldn't prefix session keys with underscores. That's kind of owned by Laravel. And then inside of this flash array is an old and a new. And we'll look into how that all comes into play. I genuinely don't know what this token is for. We'll figure that out. All right, so let's look at what this get default payload is doing. So essentially, it's going to base 64 encode the data, set last activity to the current time, and then add user information. So we're using tab, which we've looked into before. So all it will do is call the closure with whatever the first value is, and then return it. So let's take a look at add user information. If we have guards bound into the container, then it will set the user ID. So if you're logged in, that'll get added. Oops. And then the other one is add request information. So if request, okay, so we should actually see that. Here's our payload now, right? So the payload key is the base 64 version of the data. The last activity is the timestamp. We are not logged in, so that is null. And then our IP address and our user agent are set. Cool. Okay, so that was the end of get default payload. And then it's that gets written to the database, right? So, or is it? It's not. That's the record, right? Essentially. Yeah. So that's the record data, right? So user ID, IP address, user agent, the payload, and the last activity. So this is it's a little unfortunate with the duplicate naming of payload, but yeah. So that's ultimately what gets written into the database, and that's how we end up with our data. So again, what gets written now is not just your data, but also this token and the flash key. And so Laravel is maintaining its own array structure around your data. And honestly, I'm a little surprised that your data isn't in an attributes key inside of this array. Just to further avoid any potential collisions, right? So that way you avoid, you don't need to reserve underscore keys anymore, because it's actually stored in a sub key, and that's purely your data. All right, so that is that. Let's take a look at encryption then, because we did see that, but we didn't actually have it turned on. So let's turn on session encryption. We're going to go ahead and refresh. And it should be pretty much the same thing, except inside of the save, we are now going to, inside of get default payload, we base 64 encode. Oh, do I need to restart my... I might need to restart my... Yes, I probably do. Okay, let's restart sail. Sail restart Laravel.test. I may not have had to, but let's just do it anyways. Because I would have expected that to be inside the encrypted. Okay, turn the driver, save. Okay. Yeah. So now the going back to here. Sorry, where was that called? Up here. This prepare for storage. Oh wait, why is that? Does this extend it? Yes, it does. Okay, that's what happened. Okay, so at some point here then, and I apologize if you can hear the street cleaner going up and down my street. Rather than create a store instance, we created an encrypted store instance. And that's the only change, right? Is that rather than returning just the data. It just calls the encryptor on it, right? But I want to see where this is created. I guess the easiest way to do that is to throw that in a constructor. And we will play that through. And we'll just stop it. Refresh. Hit play. It didn't even hit the constructor, according to this. Let's figure out where that came from. Here. And I'm pretty sure we're in here. Okay, so let's drop a yeah, no, it's not stopping when it should. Ultimately, it's inside this driver function, I believe. Play. Yeah, okay, so driver, get default driver, return the session driver. Oh, so it will actually, yes, I see what's happening. Oh, does that mean that, hold on. This drivers. Oh, okay, I was worried, or was concerned that every driver was being instantiated. Oh, so no, we're going to hit this create driver, maybe. Well, we're not, because it's already set. I guess where... maybe Laravel's instantiating that automatically, and I'm not sure how we could... we'll have to put this in the index.php is the only way that we can capture that. So we'll drop that there. Refresh. So let's go back to the session manager. Sure, we'll just drop that there. We don't need these. All right, here we go. Okay, so okay, one of the middleware, the add queued cookies to response, seems to be what is firing up the session. As far as I can tell. Oh, wait, there's a start session middleware. Okay. Sorry, I thought that was the session class stuff. Okay, so this is where we're starting the session. So it's going to call driver right here. And then ultimately what that is going to do is call create driver. And that will be create database driver. So where is that one at? Create. Oh, they're not in here. Session manager should go right here. Create database driver. And then inside of build session, I think, yeah. So if session encrypt is true, then it will build an encrypted session instead, passing whatever was passed into it into the build encrypted session. Otherwise, it will just return the store. So this is the regular store, and then we can see down here that the build encrypted session is essentially identical. The only difference being that the arguments are slightly different. So we've got the cookie name, the handler, then we have the encryptor. So this is the encryptor instance. Then we have the ID. So this is sort of an argument in the middle for some reason. I don't know why it wasn't just added to the end, and then this could just be like a dynamic class name. But sure, okay. Yeah, that's it. So that's how the encrypted sessions get created. And then, of course, this is pretty simple. It just extends the regular store. And then prepares for storage. And is there a... Yeah, prepare for unserialize. Okay, cool. So now at this point, sorry, what we should have, if we go into our database, I don't know if I've actually written any during the course of all of this. Here's an encrypted one, right? So let's grab this ID, copy, go into Tinker. Payload is invalid. Well, hang on, what's it look like? I might have just, is it still just base64 encoded? I don't think so. It is. Okay, base64 encoded, encrypted. Okay. Oh. Oh, that sucks. Okay. Can we base 64? Eloquent base 64 decode. Can we just like pipe those things? I'm not even sure. I mean, essentially, I should just be able to call the encryptor, right? So, encryption. Crypt. Okay. I can never remember the name of that. Okay, so crypt, decrypt. Is that? There we go. There's our session data. Cool. Okay. So, regardless of whether it is encrypted and therefore a safe string anyways, I think, for the most part, right? I mean, with the type of encryption they're using, I think it's always a safe string. It's always base64 encoded. So that's cool. All right. Let's figure out what that token is for. Very curious about that. Session manager. So let's go into here. Session. Token. That is the CSRF token. All right, that makes sense. Easy peasy. All right. Okay, so that's the CSRF token. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at then is flashing. So let's kind of close other tabs. All right. So let's just take a quick look at flash data. So if you haven't used flash data, I think it's used by default for error messages, like anytime you use a validator. I think those get flashed into the session by default. But ultimately, the flash data is retrieved once from the session and then removed, essentially. And the idea being that you could put in like a success or error message, and if you refresh the page or move to another page, that message will disappear, right? And you can put whatever you want in the flash, right? So you can see here's an example of a status message. And if you want to continue to persist that data, you can either reflash everything. So just say whatever is in the flash data, keep it. That can be useful if you're doing some redirects and whatnot. Otherwise, you can specify the keys to keep. So either keep everything with reflash or keep some things with keep. To persist your flash data only for the current request. Not quite sure what that means. So if you flash something and then essentially you render it out and don't want to show it like on the next thing. So I guess an example of this might be if you do a post request and then when you redirect after, you want a success message, but when you don't redirect, you want to show errors, but you don't want those to persist, right? So I think that's where you might use now is on that last case where you're not redirecting because there are errors, but you also don't want to keep it in the thing. But you want it also to be like consistently accessible, so the page itself doesn't care where it's coming from. So let's take a look at exactly what is happening there. So let's in here session flash foo. I'm going to use the same keys. I'm doing that very intentionally because I want to show they don't conflict. So let us throw a break in there. We'll stop this session and we will refresh. Close that tab. Okay. Play. Oh, get rid of that. And that. Also that. We will keep doing this until we land where we want to be. All right, so we're going to skip a lot of this. All right, so here's the session flash call, right? So at this point, our session contains our token and our foo key. Now, if you remember correctly, that's inside of the attributes, whatever that key was underneath the session data. So let's dive into what Flash does, right? Okay, so it's going to put. This is going to conflict then. So it's going to put the data. And what that will have done, and we can't even see it because I use the same values. Let me stop and start again. I want to show that happening because I was not aware of that. So we'll change it from bar to bat. Really? Okay. So session flash. Okay. All right, here we are. So currently then, our attributes contains foo bar. So when we this put, now it has changed it. So that is important. Your flash will override your standard values. Okay. But then we do a push of into flash new of the key. Oh yeah, and I remember how this works now. And so what we actually put into the flash array is the key of the item, not the key value pair. So we are saying that on this load of the request, this is a flash key, like this is a piece of data that's only in there temporarily, and it's new, that it isn't from an old request. And if we go into this remove from old flash data, it's going to remove that same key from, if it was in there, from the flash.old, which there isn't one, won't do anything, right? So it should just be old is now an empty array. But what that means is if you flash twice, or you reflash a new thing to an old key, it will not remove it at the end. All right, so that is the first time we've done that. And when we do session save, I don't think it does. There was something in there, wasn't there? Yeah, this age flash data. So let's see. We forget flash. Is it just forgetting the old? What is that? Return. Just an empty array. Was forget. I think it's getting. Okay, yeah. So what it would do is unset anything from the session that was in .old, flash.old. And then it will put into flash old what was marked as new. So by the end of this, right, we just look now, that has foo in new, because we haven't done this bit yet. But it also has it in old. So this is how it knows that it has sort of used it once. And when we go through this here, now you can see old had that removed as well. And then we'll write that to the database, right? What that means is that the next time that we pull this data, we will ignore those keys that are in old. And I suspect the reason why we keep getting, if I get rid of this, we'll keep getting the same session, then we'll actually be able to see it in action. So let's refresh just a couple times here. Play. Yeah, we'll drop that in there. Okay. So we're putting that new in there. We're removing it out. I'm actually curious what we have in here right now. Yeah, so it's just new. It's going to set that to old as empty. And we'll save that. And write that data. Reminder, we have the save because of that DD. I think that is required. So this is our new key. Now let's see if we refresh. Do we actually get our session? So what do we call them here? Okay. Session ID. No, we got a new session. That is frustrating. What I want to be able to show is the change, right? I want to show that the next time it comes in, that the flash stuff is going away. Because right now, that is not going to be possible to show. Why am I not getting consistent keys? Oh, I wonder if the DD is killing the cookie. All right, let's just dump then. I guess I don't need the DD at all. We can get rid of that now. All right, let's just see if we get... turn that off. No, we're still getting new keys every time. Is it just... is this creating a new key? No, it's just calling get ID. Let's just get rid of that real quick then. Oh, I can't tell now. I have to go look at my session data. Yeah, I'm getting presumably new sessions each time. Because this is changing. Is it because I'm a guest? Because I'm not logged in? So I'm getting a new session every time? No, it is using the session cookies. Like, this should be where that gets set, right? Yeah. Request. Oh. There's our session ID. We'll run that through. And then we'll do it again. Oh, now it is the same. So it's probably updating the timestamp or something in there, and that's why we end up with a different value every time. Is that what's happening? Okay, so maybe we are now actually getting the same session. So let's see. Let's see if we can. Let's decrypt this real quick. I'm actually curious what this value is. About to paste a string with tabs. Okay, that's fine. Oh, right. I don't know why it copied like that. There we go. False. What is the %3D on the end? Payload is invalid. Sure. But that says it's not in... Okay, so we're getting a... Why is it attempting to... Oops. Why is it attempting to unserialize it? Okay, that's... Okay. I'm not really sure what to do about that at this moment. Okay, sorry. Let's go back to our code here. So, we will refresh. Play. Okay. I don't know if we got here. Because I need to, I think that oh no, we're right there right now. Okay, perfect. So let's go into session start. If it doesn't have the token, it will regenerate it. It will hit start. Where are we going to unset the flash stuff? Collect garbage. What are we in? Start session. Get session config. Oh, this is the session garbage collection. Okay. So where are we at here in terms of the session? We can just do session all because it shows the flash. Right. So foo is still in old. If I don't set it here, so I think the easiest way to do that is actually just to change the args. Set value. Okay. Okay, good. So at this point, what we should be seeing is old has foo in it from the previous flash. New has foo2. There's also this underscore previous, which is the previous URL that we were at. That is how the redirect back, I think it is, function works on the request object. Let's continue here then. I wonder if it's still in the start session. Yeah, here's the save session. This is where that store current URL thing is happening. And then what I really want to see is where the values from old get unset. Because for right now, why is that no longer working? Wait. There we go. This is still here. And if by the end of this request, it should be removed. I suspect it's in the save. Because we'll clean it up. All right, so we're going to save. There we go. Age flash data. Forget. This is exactly where it happens, right? We looked at this. So this is going to return an array of foo, and then we'll forget it. So by the end of that, at this point, we no longer have foo in our session. That is where the session data, the flash data gets put out, right? And then it will move what's currently new into old, so that the next time the session is written, it will go ahead and remove those items, right? Unless you call the refresh, right? And we don't actually need to run the source into this. It's not refresh, it's reflash, right? We can actually just look at the source for that. So if we go to probably in here, reflash, yeah. What it will do is merge what's currently in flash.old. So right now it would be foo2 back into new uniquely, right? So yeah, that's all that happens there. That's literally all it does is it takes every key from underscore flash dot old and moves it into underscore flash dot new. And I believe then removes and unsets. Let's just see here. Yeah, then it unsets flash old, right? And then similarly, keep does the same kind of thing, but rather than getting all the keys from old, it will just use the keys that you pass in. And then rather than set flash.old to an empty array, it will just remove specifically those keys that you mentioned. So that is it. Like there's not a lot more magic there, but that's really cool. Like I think it's a really neat way of managing the flash data. It works really well for all its simplicity. And then there's a couple more things in here, right? So flash an input array to the session. Oh, is that flash? Is that underscore input? No. So this is going to be used in like forms. Yeah. So when you redirect with input, so that allows you to like refill the form right after re-rendering it, refill it with whatever they put in. That's what flash input is doing. So what happens there, right? So normally, and we mentioned this earlier. I mentioned this earlier, where on post submission, if there's an error, you might just re-render rather than redirect, like you would do on a success. You still don't want to do that, right? The reason for the redirect after a form submission is so that you don't like hit Command R or whatever and refresh the page and resubmit the form. You don't get that warning. And so that's why like the recommendation is that you always redirect. But if you did that and didn't just render straight out, you wouldn't have what the user input. So that's what this shortcut is for, right? And so I think what's interesting here is how do we get it back out? And we should, oh, whoopsie. I'm curious where that happens. There's the get old input. Okay. And this is called where? Store. I think that you are expected to just do that, right? Here we go. Yeah, okay. So it is just kind of handled by validation. Is there anything in here that's interesting about this? Okay. All right. I think at this point that's probably a good place to leave it for sessions. Flashing is cool. I really do like that mechanism. I think it works very well. And yeah, that's how all that works. Anything else on sessions? We covered encryption. We saw the start session middleware. We covered flash data, and that's about it. I think that's really all there is to it. We looked at briefly at the fact there are drivers, and we already know how that works. So, all right. Let's move on to error handling, because I think this one is a little more interesting, and one that I genuinely don't have a huge amount of. I haven't spent any more time other than kind of doing the defaults. So let's see what the docs have to say about this, and then we'll dive in from there. So error handling. Okay. All right. So by default, right, let's open up our app bootstrap file. We are doing nothing in with exceptions. And what happens is when we have an error, so whether that's a 404 or whatever, Laravel is configured. Oh, geez. To correctly render some sort of 404 page, right? And if we let's go back to web.php. If we end up with a 500, well, in this case, I'm local, so I get this nice error page, but it would otherwise be an error 500, right? We can't. It used to be that you used to have the exception handler, right? That you would write. That has been replaced, I believe, by the with exceptions stuff. So you can call report exception method in your application to register a closure. Okay. See, this is actually what I was interested in more, I think, is the reportable exceptions. This idea that the way Laravel will call these automatically report and render. Oh, I actually didn't know this, that you could throttle reporting. That's pretty cool. Okay, so let's how are we gonna do this? So maybe let's take a look at the model not found exception. The reason I want to do that is because I think it's an internal implementation of an exception that it does not have. I expected that to have a to be reportable or renderable, whichever one it is. But that is actually not the case. So let's figure out why. So we're actually in here. So we do still have an exception handler, right? But it's been moved into Laravel's core, whereas you used to have this exposed within your skeleton. So a bunch of stuff we don't report. Validation exceptions. Oh, interesting. Wait, does that mean that flashing into the session happens here for validation exceptions? So a list of inputs that are never flashed for validation exceptions. Validation. Oh, I don't want to do that. I want to do this. Validation indicates that the given attribute should. Yeah, that's fine. Excuse me. Create a response object from the given validation exception. If response, return it. Otherwise, if it should return JSON, which is based on typically like the expects JSON header. Sorry, here. Right. Prepare a JSON response or prepare a response. Okay, let's go with this one. I want to know why the this feels misplaced. Is essentially what I'm getting to. Oh, right. Okay. So we redirect automatically with input on validation exception, except for the don't flash stuff. I find it funny that like we remove the file, like we sanitize the input somewhat here, right, by removing files, which makes sense because like you can't refill a file input, right? We don't do anything with that. But we don't take out the stuff that should be hidden. I'm also surprised that it's not sort of part of the I mean, I don't think it should live with the validation, but like wherever your validation lives, I feel is like where you should decide if a field should be repopulated. Um, but I don't think it's like a validation rule. Like that's not the right place for it. But okay. Um, guess it is what it is. And then, sorry, what is happening with um, the invalid JSON? Sorry, that was the bit that I. Oh, jeez. Here, invalid JSON. So here we just don't reflash the values, which makes sense. We're not. What are we going to re-render? Their own JSON blob back at them? That doesn't make sense. Okay. Okay, so let's dig into this handler just in general a little bit more. Is it register a reportable callback? Okay. If report using is an instance of the closure, is not an instance of closure. All right, so reportable has to be a callable. Where is this getting called? Okay. It calls that callback, passing in the reportable handler, which I believe is what we saw in the docs, right? Like here, it said that it would. No, where was it? I thought that it said what that closure would take. It was in here. Here we go. I thought I saw that it took the it got the handler, but okay. So then we have renderable, basically the same deal. And really this I think is just lazy evaluation, right? For each, like it can't do it now because it doesn't know which exceptions are going to be thrown. I really don't like that the flashing stuff is in here. I really don't like that at all. Yeah. Okay. Not sure what more I'm going to do here. I want to know where render and report are called on the exceptions. I mean, presumably it's going to be in here. Yeah, right here. So if the render method exists, and it's not false, then finalize the render response. And I'm sure that the same thing will happen in, what was it, render and report, right? Here. But that is a little bit different, but ultimately I think the same thing. What is the map? So you can alias exceptions? Is that how I'm reading that right? So if I were to, I guess over here, let's just create an exception. New directory exceptions. New PHP class test exception. Extends exception. Okay. And then with exceptions in here, we do dollar, is it this? Or dollar exceptions? Map. Okay. So I can map from, so test exception class to model not found exception class. And then inside of here, we're going to just throw new test exception. Actually, let me remove the mapping real quick, because what should happen there is we should get what will be a 500, but we'll get one of these, right? But if I add that back in, we get a 404. That's pretty neat. I didn't know that was a thing. So ultimately, if you do have like custom API exceptions, like if you're calling a third-party API and you're mapping their responses to custom exceptions, you can map that behavior to essentially one of the kind of default behaviors. So just to like kind of clarify on that, I assume if you map to one of these, it won't report them. Not 100% sure on that. Let's take a quick look. It's not immediately clear to me here. I guess we can definitely take a look and debug this, because it's set up to not report. So what I'm curious about is this is the exception map related stuff here, I think. So wait, our throwable is actually a model not found exception. But that's not what we threw. That is interesting. How did we get there? That is very interesting. Oh. Huh. Well, it has to be something to do with the mapping, right? Ah, right, because it creates um, this closure, which would get called. Um, so in render and in report, it will call map exception, which ultimately is where I believe here that will be called. So it does convert itself, and then ultimately from that point on, it is a model not found exception. Which means that anything that applies to that should absolutely 100% apply to the one that you threw. I'm not entirely happy that does it does it does pass itself in as the third argument, which means that like it would be, which is like the previous argument, right? So we know that that's where it came from. So that's okay. If it wasn't doing that, I'd be a little more concerned. And then, okay, so we believe it shouldn't be reported based on this configuration and the fact it actually is a model not found exception maybe by the time we get here. Yeah, okay, that's cool. All right. We still have about a half an hour left. I don't think there's much value in spending more time on exceptions handling or error handling. We saw where the flashing is happening for like forms and validation. Maybe at some point, actually, I should add to the list that we will cover validation, because that in itself is interesting. So let's just edit this. 12 validation question mark. I wonder if it's worthwhile jumping into Blade for 30 minutes, and I suspect not. And I don't think I can cover broadcasting in 30 minutes. Bus in 30 minutes either. I suspect this might be a short stream. We did start a little late, so we'll end a little early. Ultimately, only finishing half an hour over the regularly scheduled time. Once again, thank you for your time. I appreciate you. I didn't publish last week's video. I'll do that now and publish this one whenever I get the VOD. Again, last week being, I think, one of my favorites, the events, listeners, and broadcasting notifications. Thank you once again for your time. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I am on all of the socials other than Twitch as just DShapik, Twitch being Davy Shap. And I will be back next week to cover Eloquent and migrations. That should be an interesting one. So be back at the regular time next week, so 10 a.m. Pacific. Yeah, that's all. Signing off. Thank you much.